some more reaction because we're joined by Nigel Farage, leader of the UK Independence Party. Mr Farage, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thanks so much for coming in. Well, first of all, let's have what you welcome in the budget.
Oh, there were lots of, good headline-grabbing things. I mean, for example, a penny off a pint of beer, which, given that beer taxes have gone up by 42% in the last 6 years, it was certainly welcome. Some relief for small employers on national insurance. And, of course, the threshold at which we start paying tax, certainly heading in the right direction, going up to £10,000. I mean, not there yet. I think it needs to go up to £13,000 so that there is no tax on minimum wage. But so one or two things that look quite good. But of course, overall, on the big economic indicators, whether we look at growth, the annual deficit, the overall size of a national debt, by any objective measure, this government has failed very badly on all three of those key considerations.
And what would you be doing differently?
I think we need to cut spending far more radically than we've done. And I'm afraid the truth of it is we have a government that constantly talks about being prudent and cutting, but the figures for this year is that we will borrow another 114 billion sterling more, and we're adding on to the national debt. And by the end of this Parliament, this 5-year Parliament, the national debt in this country will have increased by something like 45%. And that gives you really a perspective of the fact that we really are, our spending is totally out of control. So I would like to see some much tougher spending cuts and correspondingly some genuine cuts in tax to get money being pumped into the real economy.
Where would the bulk of those spending cuts come?
Well, I think that there are the obvious ones. Why would you give 1% of your national budget every day to the European Union? Why are we spending as much as we are on foreign aid, much of which is very questionable? But the really big area is the £60 billion a year that we spend on quangos in this country, paying an awful lot of people huge sums of money for doing, frankly, not very much. So these are where the cuts need to come.
If there were any easy answers, I imagine that Mr Osborne would have picked them up today. Lots of those things you mentioned are politically, let's just say, explosive.
Well, nothing's easy in life, and, governments that do tough things in the short term to make things better in the long term will always meet a wall of protest. And some, of course, will say, well, you've got to remember, this is a coalition government, but I think it really reflects a lack of genuine courage. And frankly, if Labour were in power, I don't think the budget today would have been very different.
Mr Farage, once again, thanks for joining us today on Budget Day. Nigel Farage there, the leader of UKIP.